those who do not know what the African Capacity Building Foundation is, in a few words, we were established in 1991 by the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the United Nations Development Program, with several North American and African governments, with a mandate to build capacity in the area of economic policy management, general and development management. In the 90s, people were starting to do an evaluation of structural adjustment programs. And they found out most of them were leading to failure, or they were failing. The question was, why were they failing? The World Bank and the international community basically did a study, and they determined that because these policies were not identified, developed, implemented, evaluated, and managed by African government themselves, and that there was no capacity to do that in Africa, that's why mostly they were failing. You have a case of policy programs and strategy not initiated by their owners, by the government. That's why they determined that one of the objectives was to provide the African governments with the capacity to do the analysis, to develop these programs, and first to formulate policy and strategies, development programs and projects, implement them and manage them. And to implement these African capacity building initiatives, they established what they call the African Capacity Building Fund. And to manage the fund, they established the African Capacity Building Foundation. In the 90s, I'm giving you this background so you can understand some of these programs that I will make a brief presentation. The question that in the 90s, they were asking, where do we establish this program? By the way, it was not the World Bank program. It was basically a UNDP program, because the World Bank was the biggest funder, and they decided that they should be the one to manage, to own the program and to manage it. The question was, where do we establish it? They determined first that it should be based in Washington. The people said, how can you manage African development through Washington? So, and then they did a study in Africa, and to determine where in Africa it should be established. They looked at a number of countries, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Ethiopia, Nairobi, Kenya, Harare, Zimbabwe, Cape Town, South Africa, and Pretoria. In the 90s, there was no city in Africa that could compete with Harare. So they determined that the headquarters of ACBF will be based in Harare. And today, when you hear about Harare, you hear about inflation of 5.5 billion. You can wonder why anything good can happen in Harare. We're still based there. We cover Africa from Harare. And what we do basically, we provide support, technical support to African government, civil society, private sector to build their capacity in the area of, originally was economic policy management, and then we move into 6 other areas. I'm giving you this background so you can understand where we are with these programs. The question of the time was that the problem in Africa was the problem of policy, economic policy. So what do we do with economic policy in Africa to build their capacity? The answer was that we train economists. So I'm giving you this background, and you will understand why these programs are based in economic departments. And the model to be at the beginning was that we needed economists that will help the government to do economic policy analysis, advise them in economic policy formulation, economic policy management, evaluation, and all that. So using the model that the Canadians have developed at the ARC, we basically developed the programs in economics. We provide support to about 20 universities in Anglophone Africa and about 17 in Francophone Africa to train economists. And then people say, hey, something wrong here. We have so many economists, but we don't think that we are putting our resources in the right place. So somebody came with the idea, oh, why can't we look at the Economic Policy Management Program that is at Columbia University? Because with the World Bank, Columbia University has just developed this Economic Policy Management Program. But Columbia could only admit, it was for the whole world. They could only admit only a very limited number of Africans to this program. Not more than 30 or 40 for the whole world. So the objective was that, can we duplicate the Columbia University program for Africa? The question was, who is going to organize these programs and where? I'm raising this issue again because of the area of technical cooperation, international technical cooperation, and trying to determine that these programs were basically developed and incubated at two places. We were incubated at Makerere University. This is where we go. EPM Cerdy in Canada, in France, and then EPM McGill. They said, why don't you incubate two programs for African to go there? And then once they are ready, we can transfer them to Africa. And this, the assumption is that EPM McGill and EPM Canada Cerdy had the technical expertise, had the know-how to brew this program and to develop technical cooperation. When we draw lessons of this experience, we will show that this type of technical cooperation sometimes doesn't work because of the motivation of the people who are in there. So the first programs were developed at Cerdy and McGill. The cost of the program at Cerdy and McGill was about $60,000 to $70,000 US for 18 months. So this program was developed with the World Bank through the Joint Japan World Bank Scholarship Program and ACDF at the two places. What happened is that the objective was basically to establish the program up there and then incubate them and then bring them to Africa when they were ready. So we basically gave ourselves an objective to train middle level, senior middle level policy advisors and managers from sub-Saharan Africa to get a degree, a master's degree in economic policy management. You can find here that we are focusing on policy. It's not economics, but it's policy. But because they were basically developed in an economics department, one of the issues we're going to be dealing here with is that the orientation has been to train people mostly in economics, and they're very little focused on policy, public policy, and all that. So we established these programs. They were developed in 1998. We decided that it was time to bring them to Africa, and we asked ourselves, where do we establish them? So there were two institutions in Africa that were working with, two with Cerdy and two with McGill. So we said, okay, we're going to have two programs for Anglophone Africa and two programs for Francophone Africa. You can note here that the Lusophone countries are not being considered here. We'll bring them a little bit later. So basically, we established the two programs in Canada first, and we brought them to Africa. The question was, we should adapt them to the context in Africa. One of the lessons we learned was that when this program was being organized at EPM McGill University, there were some specific courses. For example, strategic planning was not being done. Project and program management was not being done. When you're dealing with the implementation of policy in African context, mostly the instruments that are used are strategies, programs, and projects. At McGill was heavily economics, international relations and economics. Anyway, so today we started with four. The four were one Makerere University, one University of Ghana at Legon for the Anglophone countries, one at the University of Yaoundé, and one at the University of Cocody in Côte d'Ivoire. Those are the four. So I'm going to ask the four program directors to come here, but now we only have two Francophone. The two Anglophone are not there, the old one. Again here, I will discuss the context within which this program are being implemented. So the objective was basically to build capacity in economic policy management. First, when they were being developed, the question was that, this institutional environment of this university, are they ready to adopt, to organize this program? And we said, no, you should build the environment within which this program will be developed. The environment means what? When you go to the University of Makerere University, they have classrooms, but they are overcrowded. The computer room says about 30 computers for about 3,000 students. So the environment of this training was not there. When you develop the same program, for example, in a Northern University, you know that the environment is oriented. What you have to do is just to develop it. But in Africa, we had the challenge basically to develop the environment within which classroom, computer lab, library materials, and even to train trainers. That's one. Number two, we said that we have to build a critical mass of policy analysts, because when you have the Minister of Finance, we only have one policy analyst and policy managers. You cannot do anything. The objective here is that to increase the number of people to be trained in economic policy analysis, policy formulation, policy management. And the third one, which is very important, is that we wanted these programs to be networked, not only in African context so that they can exchange faculty, they can exchange students, they can exchange materials and experiences, but also with other institutions doing the same thing. So the objective of us bringing them here, as we'll see, is that for them to understand network like a public policy network, a policy network like this, so they can determine, here are our challenges, how the other people resolve these challenges, even though the context and the environment within which they're doing this is different. So up to now, the 4 programs have achieved considerable. I would say at the beginning that this program was brewed and developed with the Joint Japan World Bank Scholarship Program. And this program has been in existence in the last 20 years. They celebrated the 20 years last year, and through the program, 3,400 managers and policy analysts have been trained through the Joint Japan World Bank Scholarship Program. Of those 3,400, about 1,000 have been trained in about 10 years in Africa. That show the number. The cost is lower, the number is very high. We train them in Africa. When you send them to Japan or to Columbia University, they don't come back. When you send them to Japan, usually they say they marry Japanese girls and they stay there. In Africa, there's no, you train them in a context, it's very cheap. They marry African ladies and they stay there. That is, I'm not saying that international marriage are not encouraged, but this case is that we have produced 1,000 about 10 years, when the Joint Japan World Bank Scholarship Program, in 20 years, they only turned about 2,400. You can say the number of training them. So the 4 universities have trained about 1,000 master's degree. There's no brain drain. There's no, when they go back to where they used to work, they don't, mostly they're captured by organizations like the World Bank, and all. This is another problem that will indicate at the end. We train them to go back to the public sector to formulate policy and all that, but now they're being taken by the international organization. And here again, you establish the environment, the incentive to track them into the public sector is not there. One of the issues that I have to deal with. Here are where these graduates are being trained. Are they being employed in a central bank, development bank, government ministry, and all that? As you can see that we train them to go to work in the public sector, mostly, because it's the economic policy management. But you see in Africa, you don't find them only in the public sector, you also find them in NGOs. They establish their own consulting firm that reflect basically the context within which they are working. I'm not going to go into the achievement in terms of human capacity building. I will basically say that institutional capacity, we go in these schools, they have the environment to train these people. When you go to Cocody, for example, they have a modern classroom, modern computer room. The classroom are so you can tell the difference in island of development within the sea of poverty. How do we sustain that type of capacity? That's another issue. I'm going to move into the networking area. They have established a network that they call IPMAN, which is basically a network of all the four, the old four ones. It's based now in, they rotate, they're now based in Cocody. They rotate, they meet every 2 years to review programs, content, and all that. Let me now go to basically what the message we wanted to present here in this workshop. When we did yesterday morning, people were talking about Big Bang. They're talking about incrementalism. Where do we start? Global governance. I was basically saying to my colleagues that I don't know where Africa fits. Because the issue of public policy and policy, it can be for the energy crisis, the financial crisis, and all that. In African context, currently, when you're talking about like you were talking yesterday, it's like you're flying a 747 and there's still a small Cessna even on foot. Because the concept of public policy applied to this area, the approaches, the tools and all that, there are very few people in the public sector and all that master this concept and tools. Very, very few. That's why you see that the practice of public policy within the public sector is not there. As a matter of fact, I don't think that there are in Africa one school, graduate or undergraduate in public policy. I don't think if anybody can tell me where it is. If there is one, it is probably in the Department of Political Science or is in the public administration. You don't find so. And when we go, for example, to Francophone countries, even worse, because in French, policy can mean politique. Politics may also mean politique. In the sense that they confuse the two. That's why I'm not surprised to find that here in this network, the school that's in here from France is the Sciences Po. Sciences Po, what does that mean? That public policy is within political science. So you see that very, very few people in Africa I may be wrong. I may be wrong. Yes. Yes, you can put it in a context. But what I was trying to say here that in Africa, you do not find graduate schools of public policy. Public policy is not taught, is not a practice, and therefore you go in the public sector, you find this weak, very weak process of policy analysis, policy formulation, policy implementation, policy monitoring. This was my first message. The second message is that network like this should be used as a way of developing technical cooperation with institutions like the one we have here. Our EPMs have the resources, but there are areas in which they need cooperation. One area is exchange of faculty, because even the people who are teaching them, most of them are economists. I give an example. One course, a course of public policy, is taught by economists. What they teach is economic methodology, economic research method. Is it public policy? No, it's not. So the orientation in public policy is weak. So a network like this should be used as a framework within which support or exchange is provided so that they can focus on public policy. That's number one. Number two, when you look at even the material that they're using in public policy and all the other areas, you have very weak training material that's being used. Why? Again, they are not used to training policy. Number three, the methodology of training public policy, public analysts and all that, they still use in the classical training teaching instead of training. As we indicated it earlier, these programs are training programs. They get people from the public sector that have already 3 or 4 years of practice, and they bring them into there. It's not teaching, it is training. But most of these, they still teach. So these framework should be the one they can exchange experience to say, how do they improve methodology of training? And lastly, I will basically bring some of them here so that they can give you some of the insights on the issue that I have to deal with. The issue is that when we bring them in contexts like this, there are very few African governments, policy analysts, policy managers that basically can come out with framework and all that to deal with global issues like energy, like financial crisis and all that, because they do not, at the moment, grasp the methodology, the tools, the techniques of policy, public policy formulation, and policy management. Let me basically introduce you to the four that are here. The two from Anglophone, you can come here. From Francophone, you have two. That's Professor Tsafak. He's from the University of Yaoundé. You have Professor Seka, who is from the University of Cocody. Those are the two. Francophone one, the Anglophone are not there. But to respond to the need, there is increasing need. People are demanding to get into these programs. For each cohort, we can only, for each university, we can only be 30 to 40. The demand is sometimes about 200, 300 that are qualified to get into these programs. So recently with the World Bank, we agreed that we'll expand the coverage of these programs. We developed the three new ones, basically one to cover the DRC, the Congo, because we consider that you can come here. The Belgian system is different from the Francophone system. So to cover Rwanda, Burundi, Angola, and all that, and for the DRC itself, we said, you may need a whole EPM program because these are some of the countries. So he is from EPM Kinshasa. We said a Lusophone country up to now are not covered. So we said, can we give them the opportunity also to train economic policy analysts? Madame Louise, you can come in there. She is from EPM Mozambique. And finally, for the Anglophone country, we consider that the Southern African, because the Makerere one could not cover Southern Africa. So we developed one which is based in Zambia. We'll cover Southern Africa. Professor Nulo, you can come and sit here. So these are basically currently the African Economic Policy Management Program. I will let them, whoever wants to say something can say briefly, and then if you have questions or comments and all that, I'd like to hear your comments on a Francophone School of Public Policy. Why is Sciences Po here, and how is it organized in France? Any of you can say, you want to say something? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Director. Thank you for coming, everybody. I think all has been said. I want just to add a few things, especially what we need, and I hope that you will help us to move further. We need practitioner lecturers, high qualified practitioner lecturers, because as has been said, policy analysis is not economic policy. So we need people that are, the relevant skills to help us implement economic policy analysis in our programs to help our government. Second, we need you to help us in designing the policy analysis classes. How should we organize those classes to get better product for our government? Maybe we also need you to help us in organizing how to teach a professional class. People are saying that one of the challenges of this kind of program is that students are not students. In fact, they are professional. They are coming from government sector, sometimes private sector, sometimes NGO. So they are not students. And we have a problem coming to the fact that people that are teaching sometimes are coming from faculty members, sometimes they are practitioners, but when a professional came to university, sometimes he acts as if it is from university. This is not what we need. We need people that share experience and try to and also maybe we need some help in technical schools of disseminating this kind of practice knowledge. So I hope that your presence here will help us to move further. I hope we will get your visit card to write some email to you, and thank you.
You want to
say something? Okay.
Well, my name is Luisa Ribeiro. I came from Mozambique, and we are working now to start up this program, maybe in 1 month, in November, next November. And we have to face a lot of challenges. First of all, as Dr. Katuala said, we don't have schools of public policy. So we don't have any experience on how to teach professionals, as my colleague said. We don't have students, but professionals that come from ministries and other public institutions, and just a few from the private sector, so I mean self-sponsored students. And we have some difficulty to get good course materials. I mean course materials that can help students and teachers to debate practical issues on my country, Mozambique, and the other Southern Africa countries, and the integration, the Southern African integration, economic integration. So I would say there is another third challenge, that is to network with similar institutions, and this meeting was really very good for me to meet people from the other EPMs and to change some ideas and go forward for further experience exchange. But we also want to get this experience exchange from abroad, not only from Africa, and not only from Lusophone universities and partnership, but a more vast relationship with academics from all over the world, and if possible with professionals that play the role of practitioners at the universities. Thank you very
much. I'm Manengandula from the University of Zambia. As was explained earlier, we are just starting the program at the University of Zambia. In fact, next week, classes start on Monday, and we have enrolled about 30 students. So for us, I think the major challenges were institutional setup in terms of setting up the program. Of course, the program is based in the Department of Economics, but we have support from the other departments like public administration, political science, in the University of Zambia. So it's really the institutional setup costs, but in designing the program, we see major challenges that my colleagues have mentioned. That is books, resource materials, designing of the curricula. So that will be an ongoing activity, and any kind of interaction and feedback, which in a way that we access like up-to-date modern materials or practice the way they are doing in other schools of public policy, not only in Africa, but in the world, as my colleague has said. One focus of the program we have is the MA program. The other one is short-term training. So we'll also be providing short-term courses, short-run courses for perhaps a week or 2 weeks to support the program. So that is also an area where perhaps one can get help in terms of resource people who can come for a short period of time to help manage that, to help run the courses with the other faculty in the university. I think those are just my preliminary remarks that I thought I should make.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from you. You have questions, you have comments, so that we can have an exchange. We appreciate you being here. We want to hear from you.
On political science, because it might give a wrong impression. We certainly do not want to be a uniquely economics program. That is absolutely true. But we would like to have a three-legged approach. One is organization and organization theory and implementation. Other schools call it management. I prefer talking about organizational sociology, collective action theory. The second is political science, and the third is economics. Very important, and of course, everything that goes with it, quantitative analysis and so. But economics should not be, as it is in many programs, the absolute king. People should learn economics, but should also learn to be skeptical about economics, and not think of economics as something that can objectify reality. So the sociological input for somebody trained in economics is very important. So this is really why I said, but you are right, of course, in saying that it's not by pure chance that this is in Sciences Po. Sciences Po is social science, not just political science. This is why I...
I think it's going... Yeah, I'm Jennifer Bremer from the American University in Cairo, which is part of Africa too, I think, last time I checked. No one's been doing any rearranging. We're sort of in the middle in some ways, because AUC is a very established university, and we've had public administration for about 30 years in place, but our public policy program is growing out of our public administration program, kind of like the Kennedy School. I'm Kennedy School, so that model. We have some of the same challenges, but I'm here primarily because I think there's a lot to be gained by collaborating between the North African side and the Sub-Saharan African side. We just hired a new colleague who's a Sudanese American, Darfurian, sent him to a conference in Rome, and I came here, so we just split them up. But I think there's a lot to be gained, and AUC has historically had a lot of cooperation with Sub-Saharan Africa. I've had an African Fellows Program, and we have some alums, scattered around the continent who are in senior positions. So I think we also have a shared agenda in terms of wanting to develop curriculum that's more relevant to the region, and trying to get public policy established as a discipline. Which it certainly is not. I mean, I think there's a public policy program at WITS, or one very similar to a public policy program, but that is about it. Besides our program, so I'm just interested in learning about your programs and seeing if there are ways that we can collaborate.
That's very. I'll let you talk. That's a very important one. Because what we're looking for here is like, if your institution organize a course, for example, in public policy, they need even the elementary to get the background, policy analysis, policy formulation, policy evaluation, policy recommendation, and all the method linked to it. We want to say that, can we send one of their faculty that's going to teach this program to come attend this course? They'll pay for it. They have the money. The resource is not a big issue. They still have the resource. So it'll be interesting to try to see whether you have this type of course, or you have people that can work with them to develop material to train trainers in public policy analysis. I also agree with you that when I said political science, I completely agree with you. When you look at the way this program was designed, they have economics core, they have management core, which include also organization, but they have also financial core, and they have elective. But because they are located in School of Economics, they heavily put emphasis on economics, because that's the thing that they know how to teach. So what we're trying to say here that, can we link with people who are really doing public policy, and then you'll see that it is a generic tool that you can apply to economics, transportation, health. So this is very interesting. Thank you.
All right. My name is Masahiko Takeda. I'm with Hitotsubashi University of Japan. I'm really glad to hear that my government's funding support is helping your program. And but at the same time, clearly, according to explanation, you are in need of resources, especially human resources, including practitioners who can teach their own experience, and perhaps also teaching materials and some such physical materials as well. But maybe you already answered this question. I was just curious. It's not really a funding issue that you are struggling with. Do you have enough money from, say, this Japan World Bank Fund to spend for getting these human resources? I was just wondering, some of the Japanese aid institutions like JICA has a program in which they send experts to, say, Africa or any other countries, resident experts. And some of them are university professors, or actually retired officials, or the mid-career officials. So if you talk to these, some of these aid organizations, they may be able to help you, not just in terms of money, but actual, body and knowledge that comes with it. So have you tried this kind of channels?
Let me answer that directly. In Harare, we are on the 7th floor. JICA is on the 8th floor. I'm giving you that background. It's one of the challenge also that we found with this program is that we are funded by Japan, but the Japanese government is part of the African Capacity Building Trust Fund. When we go talk to them and said, we're already giving you money, why do you come and get another window? The problem with these programs is that them in the field, they're good economists, but they cannot sell themselves. So if, for example, the one that is in Cameroon, they could probably contact JICA in Cameroon trying to see whether they can provide support. When we go, they said, oh, we're already giving you money, but this is one of the biggest problems with this program that I mentioned, financial sustainability. These guys are good economists, but they're not good managers. They cannot even sell you a box of matches. They cannot sell their program. That's a big difficulty. Very few of them has been able to attract, to get money outside of that what we gave them, the World Bank gave them. That's a major challenge that they have. At the central level, we have that difficulty. I just gave an example. We know the Japanese government very well. We appreciate very much the Joint Japan World Bank Scholarship Program. Through this, we fund this program. But for this type of support, they, in a country level, are supposed to do that. At the central level, we have difficulty to say, you're trying to do double dipping, they call it. So I will encourage them to, in their countries, to basically contact JICA, contact the Japanese ambassador to try to see how they can do. Some of them do it, but some don't. And that is, again, the problem with economists.
I want to take I was just answering before, and now I would like to sort of make a more general statement about my program. We are very interested. This is the reason why I'm here this afternoon. We wanted to learn about you. I ignored your existence, I'm sorry to say, but now I don't. And the MPA in Sciences Po does have African students, and it can also very well, we should talk, I think, we should talk about possibilities of having some interaction, mission, help, advice, whatever. It's got to, but this is really something that we should be talking about. This is just to say that we're open and interested in having more contacts with Africa, Francophone and Anglophone, because our program is in English. So we're teaching our program in English at Sciences Po. So whoever, Anglophone, Lusophone, Anglophone, Francophone, as long as we can do the program in English, our language is English. So let's afterwards network a little.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. You hear that. Usually, what I tell them that we give you food, and you want us to give you the mouth to eat it. So this is a very good opportunity. Just exchange card. Have specific action in which you want to interact. They may not have a lot of resources. They're not going to come empty-handed. They will have research to support themselves. And thank you for providing that input. So you guys you've heard. Some have more need than others, but all of them have the need to develop the core on policy. All of them to develop the core, to train trainers, to develop training materials. If any contribution can be made in that with us, or we can coordinate with you and us, it's going to be a major achievement for these African programs. And finally, he mentioned the short-term courses. Most of these people, they cannot take off and come to the university and spend 18 months, because by the time they go back, they won't have their position, and they're scared to leave their position. So they don't want to come. But short-term courses will be also very, very, very welcome. It can be developed jointly with you, fiscal policy, transportation policy, I don't know, an area in which you have a comparative advantage. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Robin Lewis, and I've been involved in this field for a long time. By coincidence, you went back to the origins of EPM programs with the one in Columbia, and as a young dean in those days, I actually wrote a good deal of the original proposal. The economists, being economists, wrote all the parts having to do with the economics curriculum. They said, here, you do the rest. So you know this dilemma very well. But I'm now based here in Beijing, and that leads me to think, for one thing, that you might look for some collaboration and resources here. The Chinese government has made a major effort to reach out to Africa. There was an African Leaders Summit here with several dozen heads of state, I think early last year or the year before. And now it's a little noticed because it's smaller than the others, but they have also set up a sovereign wealth fund for Africa, about $5 billion US, that is meant to help to finance economic development with Chinese partnership in Africa. So that might be a potential source of assistance and collaboration. The field of public policy is also relatively new and undeveloped here. But there are, of course, universities, and we're in one now, and there's another one across the street, Tsinghua, that have considerable resources and have developed some new programs, including English language programs, and are developing English language programs. So certainly China is one potential source of collaboration. And there's some in Shanghai, too. But I was going to really ask you a question that might help some of us here to understand better your needs. It strikes me that there's a really hard problem that you articulated which had less to do with money and more to do with human resources, which is how do you find non-economics faculty? How do you find people who have some experience in public policy teaching, public policy curriculum design? And that's a tough problem, because one of the, if you might call it, undersides, it's an inevitable one, of this kind of a construct, the GPPN and all these schools coming together, is, of course, everyone is competing for those human resources. Everybody needs consultants, they need faculty, they need visiting faculty, and the newer programs are at a disadvantage because they are new. They're in places that are harder to get to and harder to attract people to. So I wanted to ask you first where you are currently drawing faculty from. Are you using any resources where you can attract faculty for short-term, kind of what we call at Columbia mini courses, where you can, it's not an ideal place to be, but it's a good place to start and to build up to permanent faculty, bringing in faculty for a short time to do intensive courses alongside your faculty, so that it's a capacity building project that builds toward a future when there will be permanent faculty. And that might help us, and me in particular, to think about what kinds of resources might be brought to bear to help develop the program.
Thank you. I'll let you talk. This is a very critical issue within this program. When they were incubated at McGill and CERDI, one of the objectives was to link them with the African universities so that they can develop the human resources to teach in this program, to manage this program. And that objective failed. It failed because as I said before, motivation. Technology transfer, capacity building is not like communicating bases. It's like you have a knob in the middle. Here they have the technology. Over there they don't have the technology. When you open the knob in the middle, and it's gone. No, you have to determine what the motivation of these programs. When we started this program with McGill and CERDI, we signed an agreement. We said that once they are incubated, once they are developed, we transfer them to Africa, and then you end doing them. Because for them, the motivation was not necessarily human capacity building. It was to make money. I'm serious. Okay? It's to make money. So the motivation of technology transfer, human resource capacity, it's one of the areas that failed. As a matter of fact, I'll go beyond that. Some of them currently, this was 1994, 95, they ended 1997. They still have the balance of the money that we gave them to develop this program. They don't want to send it back. So the motivation here is like when we are developing, what's the motivation for them to be involved? It was basically money. Because this program, they got money from the World Bank Institute, $60,000 for each of the students. For them, it was a money-making enterprise. So when we transferred in Africa, they continued to organize it. So now, for example, the government of France, who was funding this program, especially in Francophone, ended its support to the program. But they continue to give money to CERDI to organize the program. So you can say that technology, capacity building, you have to have the same motivation. For us, we put it there, we said, take some of the young faculty, train them how to organize this program, train them how to manage them, so that when we transfer in Africa, they will have a master. They didn't do it. So when we came back, we provided them the money. We provided them to do the institutional environment. And they have been drawing faculty from their own schools. And as I said before, this is economic policy. This is not economics. And most of the people teaching in their schools are economists. So they have not, this is a component in which they have not developed. So what we need now is probably something like a short-term courses, training of trainers, a specialized idea, somebody to come in there to be attached with somebody to train a specific course and policy so that they can get the capacity to do it. This is what we're trying to do. And second, when the original design of the African programs, we put money there for international cooperation. A lot of money. They didn't use it. As you said, the problem was it's not easy to get somebody because they're in demand. You don't find specialists in public policy everywhere. No, they're in demand. They prefer, for example, to go work for the World Bank and IMF and all that rather than going to teach in this program. So they did not use it. So the World Bank said, oh, because you did not use it, you don't need it. We said, no, they still need it. They said, why didn't they use it? So again, we have this issue, a kind of a vicious circle. They need the resources to train trainers, to train the human capacity, but the people to come and work with them and all that are not available. I'm going to give an example of Lusophone countries. We're trying to get some of their colleagues from Anglophone existing to go help them. They help them to design. They designed, the other one, Makere designed the one in Zambia. Ghana designed the one in Maputo. Yaoundé designed the one in Kinshasa. They brought their experience and all that. For training, we asked, because they have issue like you have faculty, students coming from different environment with different levels. How do you deal with it? Okay, Rob came from Colombia and he said, we organize tutoring. We said, no, in African context it won't work. What is your experience? Their experience is that at the beginning of the course, the program, they organize what they call refresher courses for about 3 weeks. Because people have not learned econometrics or they learned 20 years ago. So when they come today, they have forgotten even how to go to a classroom. So they organize not a tutoring, but they organize refresher courses for 3 weeks or 2 weeks. They go into these basic courses. That's number one. Number two, this program, for example, at the end, they used to have an internship. But the internship in Africa proved to be was not useful. Why? Because they used to ask to go to international organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, the ADB. You see, I am a World Bank staff that was assigned to ACBF. Okay, when I'm at ACBF today, out of 12 months, I spend 9 traveling. So if you assign me somebody to coach him for 3 months, he may see me only probably 1 week. That's one. Number two, you have, for example, ADB or International Organization in Africa, people who are not supposed to be there. So when you assign him a young man that's coming there to get a master's degree, and you tell him, coach him, he see a threat. That's this guy, when he get his degree, he's going to come back and get his job. So they don't coach them. They don't have time for them. So there are several of these, and also, one time, for example, we used to send the Congolese to Belgium. When they go to Belgium, they don't come back. The one for Angola, so we decided no more internship. But how do you deal with the practical aspect of learning? The way to do it is to change your methods and techniques of training. So when you put them in a classroom, you simulate the classroom, the work environment, case study, simulation, games, and all that, so that they can acquire some of these tools. So these are some of the areas they need support. They need support. And you mentioned the Chinese. We're very glad to hear that because we see now the rise of China. When you go to Africa, you'll find the Chinese everywhere. We're glad to have them because they're making a contribution to African development. One of the areas that they could make a big contribution is to build capacity. That's a very important area, to build capacity. Instead of doing capacity substitution, they should build capacity. And this is a very good area in which we want to work with. If you can provide us information, we will ask them to follow up because this is a very important. We want to diversify cooperation. We want also to have other experiences. Thank you for the information. And this is very critical. I hope that you guys are noting. Get the information and then we'll follow up. And if you can help us to establish those contacts.
I will say by way of warning, though, that the initial impetus for this effort in China is, no surprise to anyone in this room, it's a political agenda.
That's right.
And it's a commercial agenda second. But part of the evolution of the part of the globalization of China has been to understand that there's another dimension of it. You said it's an aspirational, and that you will be more successful in those first two areas of endeavor. You're also lending your expertise and capacity to them. And if they hear that from their partners, their commercial and political partners more often, I think that will sink
Thank you, thank you. Finally, we have been in contact with the Chinese embassy in Harare, where we're based. They have expressed interest to join ACBF for some time, but they have not joined yet. So we hope that as things, because this is where, in Africa, we consider ourselves as being the African Capacity Building Foundation. Because you don't, of course, you have the World Bank, the UNDP, that are older institutions that have had this mandate for a long time. But we only do capacity building. That's only what we do. And we pride ourselves of being, today in Africa, when you're talking about capacity building, UNDP, they'll send it to us. You go to the World Bank, they'll send it to us. You go to the Canadian, they'll send it to us. So basically, we've been talking with the Chinese government, and they have shown interest in joining. And if they're there, we will be very encouraged so that we can basically work with them with policies being made, orientation, issue of capacity in Africa are being discussed. And we have had them in some of our board meetings, our governors meeting, and they have indicated willingness to join ACBF. And anything in this specific area you can help, we will be glad to follow up. Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello. Yes. My name is Mohan Ta of Chiba University, and as a foreigner who is working in Japan, I can probably very much empathize your relationship with JICA. I very much understand that feeling, that relationship, and also that I think the JICA has been very much monopolized by economists. So all they can send you is another bunch of economists from the two very prominent institutions in Japan. And here we are in Chiba University, we are trying to develop a different kind of public policy school. We don't have one yet. We have someone doing the public policies for years, but we don't have one. And we were trying to develop something different. So in a sense, we will need your request to the Japanese government that you would like to cooperate with us. So we can perhaps provide a different type of assistance in any way you like. And I think what I didn't hear from you is perhaps something like community and something like environment. I think economic analysis in abstract sense really doesn't work. You know, I was born in Taiwan when Taiwan was still very poor. At that time, people can't even afford to buy an apple. It's for the very rich. But nowadays, apple usually go rotten in Taiwan. And when I was young, I don't remember there was any sort of executive training program in economic analysis, really. And now Taiwan's cabinet is full of PhD trained in America. And guess what? Taiwan's economy is going down. So what you need is integrity, I think, and a good common sense, and a much broader, comprehensive notion of development, rather than expert in econometries, you know. And that's why I very much echo your sentiment, how to do it, and as a lot of things to say how to teach. You can't just bring whatever we got as advanced teaching method in the West and then just bring it there. I know it's not going to work. And if it's work, it might not do any good to the country. It might just do good to the people who receive education. That's it. So let's work together.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your advice and guidance. And again, colleagues that are here, please, let's follow up. And I think that we have to avoid these programs becoming elitist programs that train people in theory and all that and go into government, and then nothing happens. Because issues like energy and all that, and food security, and they're not going to be resolved only at the level of the bureaucrats and all that. No, you have to to permeate even at the local level so that they can have some of these basic tools, because they are generic tools. You don't only. What's the beauty of public policy? What is it? Is it a discipline? I would say no. Public policy is everything. You're talking about political science, organization theory, engineering, economics. It's sociology. That is what the beauty of the beauty of public policy. It's a mixture of those. When you can apply them at the local level and get those people, how to mobilize them, how to make them participate. Issue of governance. They have a course on governance. I mean, you see how they're teaching it. It's only how to govern when you talk about government, you have to talk about government at all levels. We have a program in governance. When we bring our project to the board, they only want to focus on the central government. We say no. Governance at all levels, local level. That's where. In his country, the biggest program they're going to have is a decentralized program because they're decentralizing. So where do you start? You start in the capital? No. This is where you provide them the tools. So I appreciate your view, and let's again follow up. How do we do that?
Another area in which you might into which you might direct attention and think about, and again, I'm struck by this conversation. I will say quite frankly that although I have worked on these kinds of issues and helping to develop these programs all over the world, Africa is the one place I have not worked, except for Northern Africa and Algeria, and so I'm only learning of the unique nature of the problems you face. Oh, yeah. And as I think of the usual mechanisms and solutions that I have counseled to programs around the world, I'm realizing that they might not work in the situation that you face. Now, when I look for when I look to the U.S. and let's also say to Europe, perhaps, for organizations that might be committed to helping you, commitment is what you need to look for. And I would suggest perhaps that you, at least let me limit myself to the U.S. initially, to look at institutions which, first of all, have a demonstrated and longstanding commitment to Africa, to African studies, and to African development. And then secondly, in terms of the funding for perhaps such a linkage, to look to foundations and other educational sector donors who, again, have a specific demonstrated interest in Africa and in African capacity building and might be willing to do something that in the foundation world, at least, is much more acceptable, which is really you have long-standing program. It dates back to the 90s. You have the 4 programs now, and you have 3 new ones. You have a track record, and you have a core donor who has started the ball rolling. People are a lot more willing, foundations are a lot more willing to give money to an enterprise that's already going than to one that's brand new. So to say to them, look, we've got this thing going, but we have some critical needs that are unfulfilled, and to seek funding and support in very specific areas, which it seems to me would be getting some faculty out to just the things you were saying, to do training, to partner with your faculty, and to build capacity as quickly as possible so that the right courses can be taught in the right way. It may be possible to do that. Again, I can't offer more specifics than that, but I think there are other people here who probably could, and there are other universities, including Columbia, that have been involved in doing this for some time and might be able to be part of such an enterprise to really target some very specific needs that weaken your programs most when you can least afford it, which is in the early development. I mean, there are some universities, I was talking to Louisa earlier at lunch, I was involved in helping to advise the startup of a new public policy program in Lisbon. So there's, and I know you don't want to limit yourself to Lusophone universities, but there's a certain natural connection there, and I'd be glad to put you in touch with them. So to look, I think you have to start by looking for people who have the demonstrated commitment to Africa.
Thank you very much. I agree with you because we had this type of links in the past with some institutions that didn't work out. I'll mention one, the School of African Studies in London, SOAS. We developed a partnership with them so that they can build a capacity of minister of planning in Ethiopia to train macroeconomists and all that. It didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? Again, motivation. Why are they doing it? Do they have any interest in all that? No. They do not. The interest is not there. The interest is something else. It's not to build capacity. The same thing when we went to Mozambique, we heard that they have an agreement with the Mozambique. We said, okay, whatever the agreement is, be careful, because we had experience with them that didn't work out, because they are not there to build capacity. They are substituting capacity, and we are not in that business. Talking about foundation, yes, we have developed some link with some foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, and some other area. For example, training master's degree in economics. For example, today in Africa, we proud ourselves of being the institution that basically fund most of the graduate schools of economics in Africa, Francophone and Anglophone. So it's a good lead. We're still trying to follow up with the MacArthur Foundation. It's a very specific country. The Ford Foundation. No, you see, the problem with us also is that, let me say this. At the beginning, we had too much money. Okay? So we had too much money. The World Bank was giving us money. The UNDP, no, we have money. Okay? So we said, okay, we will. But as we continue, people say, oh, you have money, so why do you need any more money? But they need it. And especially now that there's a financial economic crisis in the world, we know that contribution to ACBF and all that is going to go down. How do we deal with those? Diversification of source of funding from them will be more interesting. And finally, it's at the beginning, I'm talking about specific course in public policy. We agreed with the World Bank Institute that they will train trainers. They said, oh no, we have expertise, we will do it. They organized one workshop at the beginning, and that's it. And also, when I, as a trainer, when I looked, I said, no, this is not it. So it's also, you say, oh yes, we will do it. I'll do it for you. And then the interest is no longer there, and mostly the expertise is not there. I'm sorry to say that, because it's our partner organization in this specific program. So that's why we want to diversify sources. We're trying to say, yes, this is public policy. This is training of trainers. This is a fiscal policy. This, yes. Not, no, somebody say, yes, I want to do it. When you look at the content, it's not there. So we'll again follow up. We'll ask them to follow up, to stay in touch. They have a network. The president of the network, I'm surprised he hasn't said something. The presidency this year is with the president of the University of Kokodi. So through the network, as I said before, they don't have unlimited amount of resources, but they have the basic to basically fund some of these activities, training of trainers, sending faculty, inviting a faculty to come and teach. They have that minimum, and like to help them to get them in touch. Anything else? Please.
Our program happens to be based in the management department, and for historical reasons. It started out in political science, and then it moved to management. And in trying to build our program, because we're starting from a small base, I've mostly been drawing in courses from other departments, because I don't think, and I have to say I'm very skeptical that you can take an economist, even a very highly skilled economist, I'm not speaking to their skill level, and give them a short course and make them into a policy analyst as a professor. Maybe as a practitioner they can pick up some useful concepts for sure. But in terms of somebody who can then turn around and teach a course in public policy, So, I mean, I know that in the case of certainly the other universities in Egypt, because we're an American university, so we tend to try to behave like an American university, which means being interdisciplinary. But my impression very strongly is that in Egypt, people tend to stay only in their department, and it's very hard to draw in courses from political science or management or health or whatever your areas are. And I'm wondering if that's true in your case, and B, if the foundation should be trying to use more leverage to basically force that to happen, because you're not going to be able to, I think, to succeed in turning economists into policy analysts because of the all of the interest issues that you talked about.
Yes, that's a very important issue. Because when you look at the governance of this program, they tend to stay within. Okay, the economists say the economists will have the tendency to bring their friend economists. They are all supposed to be multidisciplinary. When you look at the academic council, they have people from other departments. But what's the percentage of those people that come and teach? Very limited, even though it's not their area. I'll give a very simple example. In one of the programs, the person teaching public policy, he have never taken a course in public policy. When we meet to try to evaluate this course, we say, what you've been teaching is not public policy. And he resists. The next year, he go teach the same thing. He said, no, something wrong. This is not public policy. This is economic research methods. It's not the same thing. Why? Because they tend to keep it among themselves. It's a fact. They keep it among themselves. They bring only those that cannot threaten the program. When we said, okay, we'll move you and take you to I'll give an example. Ghana. We said, okay, we'll move you into management school. No, they fought. Okay, because they consider it to be their program. It bring prestige, bring a lot of things. So this is a very good advice to them. It's a multidisciplinary. It can be in economics, it can be in management. The location is not it's what you teach and how you teach and who's teaching in it. It's a very critical factor, and they have to take that into account. At McGill University, it was an economic and management department. It was both, okay, but it was heavily economics.
May I ask you a question?
Yes.
There's something that I was wondering, listening to you. You're always answering, and you're answering for them. Do they all agree with you? Or do they see things differently? And that's an important question, because are you trying, because it means who are we talking to? Are we talking to the heads of the programs, the individual programs? Or are we talking to the foundation of capacity building? It's not the same thing. And so I would just like to know, what is it you're really looking for? Are you looking for cooperation with the individual programs, or are you looking for cooperation with the capacity building foundation? Not the same thing.
Let me answer that, and then they will answer. We ACBF, we are facilitators. We are basically for them to be here. Say we were with Rob and the World Bank Institute to praise the new ones, so that they can sign the agreement with the World Bank Institute to co-finance them. So Rob indicated to me that there was going to be a conference here of the Policy Network, Global Policy Network. And I said, wow, Policy Network, that's interesting. Why? Because these guys, they need exposure to policy. And then I asked them, is it possible for you to contact the organizers and try to see whether we can have a parallel sessions? We'll bring all our programs so that they can present what are the needs are, what are the concerns, what are the issues. So we contacted all of them, and they got an invitation, and they all confirmed they will come. Makere did not come, Ghana did not come, but all of them. We play the role of facilitators. So each one of them have different type of needs. And when I talk in Mozambique, we, ACBF, we basically play the role of facilitator. And I'm speaking because from the beginning, I've been involved in this program since 1994. They were the program that I was...
You're the father of it.
Yeah, that's correct. So that's why I'm speaking on their behalf. Some of the issue I'm raising here, they themselves will not have the courage to do, not the courage, they will not surface them, because they're like dancers. They don't know how they're dancing. Only somebody else can tell them. So somebody, hey, you know, some of the issues I'm discussing, for example, the issue of cooperation between them. Say, Yaoundé will call his friend who's in Cocody, or international cooperation, can you come and teach this course here? He comes, and the one on Cocody call Yaoundé, can you come and teach this course here? Is that international cooperation? In their definition, yes. In reality, it is friendship. Okay, but they will not raise that. When we say, well, listen, what you're teaching is not public policy. I taught in the School of Public Policy for 10 years. I was a graduate school of public administration, public and GISP at the University of Pittsburgh. So I taught 10 years of public policy. So I know what it is. I did my undergraduate with Aaron Wildowski at the University of California, Berkeley. So I know what is public policy. But when you see what they're teaching, it's something else. And I say, no, that's not it. But they resist. So what I'm saying that I know this program from the beginning. I've supervised them. I'm a management of the department. Now, micromanagement is done by my program officers. But I basically have the overview. So when you ask the question, who you're dealing with is not ACBS. ACBS is facilitator. You're dealing with them.
I think also the three of us here are set up. So I think some of the experiences don't come out very strongly because we are more grappling with the setup programs of getting who to teach, designing the program. So I think that's why there's this imbalance. I think it's like for my program, I think it's true for Mozambique and Congo DR. It's really the setup programs. That's how are we going to do this thing? Other than the everyday running, have to come from ACBF, and I think Ghana and Makerere, which is not here, and then Cote d'Ivoire and Cameroon.
Anything else? Okay. It's okay?
Let's change class.
Okay, now you can mingle. You can